Hey guys, this is Mitch with FinePoint CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to expand our level loading system to address a bunch of issues that people were having with the previous system. So we're going to go through and readjust how we do our level loading. We're going to make it a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier. One of the big questions that I had was, hey, why do we do it under root? Why don't we just throw it under a node? And you know, that's a good point. So we're going to build a base level that basically holds all of our level objects that gets called every single time we load our level. We also, one of the other big questions was, well, how do I bring my player across my levels? And so to address that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to separate our player out from our level scenes and keep it in its own node reference that gets carried between scenes. And finally, the other one that was asked quite heavily was, well, how would I make it so that if I open up a door that I can load a level and be in front of the correct door? So we're going to talk about how to create a spawn index system so that each door links to each other. And that way we can actually go from scene to scene and spawn in the correct location that we expect. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's first talk about how we're going to rearrange all of this. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to change how our entire level loading system kind of works. We're still going to use a lot of the guts that we originally built, but we have to make some small adjustments to how this works so that we can have a little bit more of a better time, if that makes sense. So first things first, let's talk about one of the big issues that people had with the previous level loading system. And that was, it's not very efficient to go through and loop through all of your objects and delete them. If you remember, in our game manager, we actually load our level and then we do load node here and we do our loading scene and we run through, we loop through and we queue free our stuff when we change our scene. So instead, let's actually build a base game scene that basically holds on to all that stuff. So we'll come into our scene, new scene. We're going to go into other node. We'll add in a node and we'll call this base game. We're going to right click, add another child node. We'll add in a node and we'll say level. We're going to right click, add in another child node. We'll add in another node and we will call that player. And if we want to, we could also put in another one for something like your user interface or our inventory system or something like that. So this will give us a lot more flexibility. Basically, what we're going to do is we'll check everything that's under our level and then we'll delete anything underneath that instead of deleting it if it's underneath the root node. And that way it's a little bit more efficient and easier to work with. So let's get a global reference to our level. We can do this a lot of ways. We can either create a variable for our game manager, or we could add this to a group. I'm going to go ahead and just throw it into my game manager and make it a little bit easier. So we'll come up here, we'll go into our game manager, we'll say var level base. And actually, I think I should probably rename this to level base, just that way we can keep our stuff consistent. And then we'll right click our level base. We need to actually set this value. So we'll create a script in our level base and we will make it inherit from node. We'll hit create and we'll say func underscore ready like that. And we'll say game manager dot level base is equal to this, or I guess self if you are on GD script. We'll hit Control S and we'll save this as base game.tscn. We'll come back to our game manager and we'll actually make this type node. That way we actually have some kind of type safety, and then we can actually now use this, right? So anytime we need to load anything into our level, we can just say level base and we're good to go. And then we can head back to our loading screen. You'll see here where we're actually coming in and adding children and removing children and things like that. Well, basically we can just change this to game manager dot And I believe we called it level base. So we'll say level base.add child current node. And then we can basically just come in here and say for each item in level base, like this, get children. If it is of class this and it's not current node, then delete it. So we'll just come in here and say, if item is not our current node that we instantiated, then go ahead and delete it. So we'll grab this bit here, copy it, and paste it like that. And that will queue free it from our memory. Now, technically, I think I've said this before, you don't necessarily need to remove the child, but I do that because it's a little bit cleaner and a little easier to work with. In my opinion, it's just easier to read, though technically queue free does remove it as a child object. Now, since we are separating our player from our level base, we are going to need to make a quick adjustment. So if we come into our level 1 wake up here, you'll see that we actually have our player here as well. So we'll come in here and get rid of our player. So we'll just come in here and delete our player because we don't need it anymore, because our player is going to be a part of our base game instead. And what we can do if we want to is we could drag this into here. But if we do that, we're going to run into a slight problem. When your player gets instanced, if you are in a menu, so for instance, if you were to boot up your game, you would not want your player to immediately be here because your user interface that is dedicated to like loading your levels and things like that would be in level base. So therefore it would be kind of funky because you would still have like the ability to control your player inside of a level loading screen. And that can be a problem. So to mitigate that, what we'll do is we'll adjust our game manager to basically instance our player when it's ready versus having it there immediately, if that makes sense. So we'll need to get a global reference to this. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to go to node and I'm just going to say player. That way I have some kind of reference to that. And we'll come into our script here. We'll go to our game manager and then I'm going to hold a reference to my player. So we'll say var player and we'll make that into a node 3D like so. And that way, if I ever need to fetch my player, I don't need to do some funky, directory walking or anything like that. I can just say game manager.player and I have access to my player. And then I'll come down to my load level and I'll just say, hey, if my player is equal to null, then I'll just instance my player. So I'll say var player scene. I'm going to make that a type packed scene like that is equal to a resource loader dot load, and I'm going to need to put a path. And I could go and just say, I believe it's scene player, I think, character.gd scene character.tscn, and I could just drag that in and there we go. Or if I want to, I could create a variable up here and just have it up there. It's up to you guys on which one you want. A lot of times it's better to just have it up here. So I'll just add that in like so. And I'll just grab this. That way I just have a little bit more flexibility with my system. And then I'll just say player scene path like that. And then I'll basically just instance my player. So we'll say player is equal to player scene dot instantiate, and then we'll just say get tree dot get nodes in group quote player, which actually I think that's a bad name. Let's rename that to player parent. That way I have a consistent name that's not going to be reused, because if I use player and the player happens to be there, then there could be a problem with, me grabbing the wrong node. So we'll grab that first element dot add underscore child, and we will add our player like that. And it says identifier player scene is not declared. Well, it is. Because I didn't do player scene path. There we go. And that should work. So now in theory, all we have to do is just come in here, save our level 1 wake up, go into our base game, drag in our original, I believe it was called main menu.tscn into our level base, and hopefully it'll just work. So if we hit the play button, let's see what it does. So we hit start game, it loads, spacebar, and nothing. It's dead. So that's a good sign. Let's take a look at what we got. If we take a look at our remote, we have our base game, our level base, which has a control loading scene. So my guess is it's not happy about something. So we'll put a breakpoint here. I'm going to put a breakpoint. This is all good as far as I can tell. This loaded just fine. Oh, because I have change scene commented out for some reason. Let's do that instead. And now let's try that. I don't know why I had that commented out. That's definitely a problem. So we'll hit play, hit start game, spacebar. You'll see we hit our breakpoint. We'll hit play and nothing. If we go to remote, it did load our level. It did not load our player. So that is a problem. So let's take a look at our game manager here, which is supposed to check if our player is null. So we'll refresh this bad boy. We'll hit play, hit the space bar. And we're not even hitting our game manager. Let's see. I wonder if we should break this up into a separate helper function. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come in here. We'll check for player. And then I'm going to come into my loading screen here. And where I do my change scene, when we do our stuff, right before we do a queue free, we will do game manager.check for player like that and see if that helps. That probably will help us out a little bit. So we'll try that, start game. It'll run through our check for player. We'll hit play and our scene has loaded. Now you'll notice that we are in the center of our map, which obviously is not ideal, but that at least gets us 45% of the way there. So now we just have to make sure that we're good in terms of where we spawn. And the best way to make sure that we're good is by creating an index system. So basically saying, hey, I'm going to spawn at this location in the scene. And that'll also be useful for things like, you know, if you're opening up a door and you want to load a level, you can instance the player in the proper location. So what we'll do is we'll come into level 1 wake up. We'll come up here. We'll go into 3D and we're going to put in a node 2D right here. So we'll right click, add in a child node, add in a node 3D like that. We'll drag this guy here like so. We'll put it probably somewhere right here. And I'm going to go ahead and call it spawn index. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to add in a script and I'm going to call it spawnindex.gd. And I'm just going to export a variable. So at export var spawn index. And I'm going to make that into a type int like that. And then I'm going to add it to a group because I have to be able to get a reference to it. So I'm going to say spawn index. And I'm going to add that in. And that basically will give us an object that we can reuse over and over and over to determine where we want to spawn our player. Inside of our inspector, you'll see we have a spawn index. And basically, this will determine which index we are associated with. So I'll explain how this works more in a second. But I'm going to right click this guy. And I'm going to save branch as seen, and I'm going to save it as a spawnindex.tscn. And the only reason why I'm doing that is just so that I have some form of object I can work with. Technically speaking, it can be anywhere in the scene, and it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to zero this guy out. I'm going to control S. My guess is that zeroed this out, and that's okay, because I should have done that to begin with. So we'll just smack dab this guy right here. There we go. And when we spawn our player, we also need to be able to move our player. So we'll come over to our game manager. We'll come into that. And you'll see that we have a section here where we have check for player. We should also have one for func move player, like that. And basically all it's going to do is it's going to move our player and rotate them to the proper location. So all we'll do is we'll just say var indexes, and we'll make that into an array. And we'll make that an array of nodes, or I guess node in this case. And we'll say that's equal to get tree dot get nodes in group, quote, spawn index. And then we'll say for I in indexes, if I dot spawn index is equal to some value, right? So how do we know what index we need to be in? Well, if we come up to our move player, we can just say target index, make that into an integer like so. And then we'll just say if it's equal to a target index, then player dot global position is equal to I dot global position, like that. And then player dot rotation degrees is equal to I dot rotation degrees. And that'll basically move our player. Now, that's cool and that's useful, but we're going to need to be able to pass in our target index to a lot of different things, right? This actually has to recurse all the way back, right? So when do we move our player? Well, we're going to need to move our player when we do our level load, right? When we do our check for players. So we'll need to do game manager dot move player, right? Which means we have to pass in an index. But where are we going to get that index? Well, we could do it on change scene, but we do our change scene up here, right? We actually do it when our process. We actually run change scene, I believe, right here under input. So we're not going to be able to fetch an index from there, right? We're going to have to fetch it from somewhere else. So what if we just come up here and say var index, and we make that into an int like that? And actually, I think we'll do spawn index like that. And then we can just come in here to move player, spawn index. But that also means that we have to populate this spawn index, right? So now we have to recurse backwards. If you remember how our level loading system works, when we press an input, we check if we are able to. So we do that right here. But we also start all of that off with our level load. This is the function that we use to begin from, right? This is where we start. Which technically this should be a capital L because it's public. So in my naming convention for C#, I usually use capital L. So we should probably change this to capital load level. And we'll pass in a spawn index like that, and we'll make that into an int. And then down here, we'll just say self dot spawn index is equal to spawn index. And that way we can populate this value. Now we have to say, okay, well, who calls this guy? Because we have to go update that. Well, this is called by our game manager, right? We actually call it, if I remember correctly, right here. So load level. And we need to pass in a spawn index, which means, once again, we're going to have to pass in an index here. Like so. We can make that a type int if we want to, and we can do the same thing here with a type string. And you'll see when I saved, it came here to my interact. I have to pass in some kind of index, so I'm just going to put a 0 for right now. We'll burn this bridge when we get there, but this is actually interesting because this is our interactable. This is actually part of our level interactable for when we click on a door. If you remember, we have a door here. And when we click on that door, we're going to need to pass in some kind of index. So all of this, just because we want to add in some kind of spawn index, right? So when we head over to our game manager, we're passing in a spawn index. That means that when we go to our main menu and we click on start game, we need to load a level, our level 1 wake up scene, comma 0, because we're going to load our first index. And now if we've done everything correctly, when we run our base game and we hit start game, it will be mad at me. All right. Oh, that's because this is supposed to be a capital L because we changed it to a capital L. So let's refresh that. Start game, spacebar, and we've spawned in the correct location. Now our character is pointing the wrong direction, but it did actually work. So now we can just come into our level 1 wake up, go into 3D, zoom in, and then rotate this guy 90 degrees. If we just come in here, rotate minus 180 like that, that should help with our character spawning in the correct direction. So if we hit start, spacebar, there we go. We've started. Nice. So now, once we have this, if we run to our door here and we hit E, we will spawn right here. Awesome. So how does that translate to actually spawning elsewhere? And what I mean by that is, what if we create a second level and we want our character to spawn on that second level? And we want them to spawn at the proper door for that. Well, this is where we can actually come and set indexes for our door. Okay. So how it's going to work, if I open up Paint real quick, we have a door here like so, right? That's a real fancy door there. And then we have a spawn point, and our spawn point has an index of 1, let's say, right? So this is index is 1. Okay. When we open up the door, we need to link it to another door, right? And its spawn index, which is 2, right? So it has a spawn index of 2. So how do we link that? Well, if our door holds onto a value that says I point to this scene, so this scene and this index, and it points to this door and to this index. And then that's how we can determine where we're going to spawn, if that makes sense. So we'll come into our load level interactable. It'll make more sense as I do it, but we'll come in here. We'll say at export var spawn index, and we'll make that a type int. And then all we have to do is just copy this guy, paste it into that, and we should be good to go. Now I'm going to take this load level interactable and I'm going to save this as a scene. It'll make life a lot easier if you have a scene to work with. I'm going to right click this and I'm going to save this as a scene. So I'm going to save branch as scene, load level interactable, and we might want to rename that to something else, but load level interactable is probably fine for now. We'll click on our scene here and you'll see we have our door way off in the middle of nowhere. So we'll zero this guy out like so. We'll pull this up, something like that. We'll pull this guy up. There we go. So now it matches, and we'll kind of pull this guy down just a tiny bit like that. We'll hit save. We'll click on our load level interactable, and you'll see that we have a level path and a spawn index. Now, something that we should do in our load level interactables, we should put some kind of spawn index in here as well. So let's click on our load level interactable. We'll come in here. We'll find our spawn index like so. We'll drag that guy in and we'll hit control and control. And there we go. Now, something that we should do, and this is just something that I would do just as like a design purpose, is if we click on this, you'll see that we have our spawn index, but we also have our spawn index down here, which is set to 0. We probably should come in here and just say on ready $ spawn index dot, and I believe it's spawn index still, right? Yep, it's spawn index. We'll make that equal to an exported spawn point index like so. And then we can just set that like that. And that way we get the advantage of coming in here and being able to adjust this value at runtime. So that way we don't need to come in here and adjust it every single time. It kind of rolls it upwards, if that makes sense. And then if we come into our level 1 wake up, you'll see we have a level path, spawn index, spawn point index. So in theory, what this should do is our spawn point index is set to 0. It should be set to 1 technically, because we don't want the character to be spawned here when the level loads. We should probably, now that I'm thinking about it, we should probably change this to target spawn index and local spawn index. I think that would probably sell it a bit better, probably feel a bit better. I think the name is just not super great. So we'll change those, and then we'll come into our load level interactable, target spawn index, local index. That makes sense to me. So we can set our local index to something like 1, and we can set our target to 0. I think that will work. And to test this, what we'll do is we'll create another scene. So I'm going to go to scene. I'm going to copy my level BSP. So Control C, scene, new scene. We'll go in here. We'll paste it. So that way we have basically a duplicate of what we had. We will get rid of our child bedroom and our bedroom. So we'll just completely get rid of those guys. There's no need to have them. And I'll come into our child room door. We'll get rid of that. We don't need it. And let me come in here, click duplicate, control, like that. And then we'll just grab this door here. We'll control duplicate it like so. We'll rotate it around like this. There we go. And I mean, we probably should do a bit more work than just this 5-second level, but I want to show you guys how this works so that way it's something easy for you guys to use. We'll grab our level interactable right here. We'll duplicate this guy and we'll drag it over here. Technically, if we wanted to, since we have a door frame, we could put a load level interactable there as well, but we'll rotate it like this. You'll see that we have basically a bounding box that faces a direction. We want it to face the direction of our interior of our level, because that's where the character is going to spawn in. So what we'll do is I'll take this target spawn index. I'll just set it to 0. Our local index will be 1, I think. And then we'll grab this guy. We'll rotate it like so that it's properly in the correct spot. We'll say our target spawn index is 1. Our local index is 2. And our level path will be level 1 wake up. That's fine. And this one we'll just do level 1 wake up as well. That's fine. So we'll hit Control S and we'll say level 2 hallway. And we'll put that under scenes and we will save it. So you'll see we have level 1 wake up, level 2 hallway. If we head over to our level 1 wake up right here, and we go to our door, which we actually have to flip around, you'll see that it's in the wrong direction. So we'll flip that guy. And what we want to make sure is that we have a local index is set to 1. If we go to our level 2 hallway, this door is going to link to this door. So we want to make sure that the target spawn index of 1, if we look at level 1 wake up, the local index is 1. The target spawn index is 0. This one, the local index is 2. Let's set that to 0 real quick, like that. And if we come to level 1 wake up, we can change this from level 1 wake up to level 2 hallway, like so. And in theory, that should just work. So if we run our scene, we load our level, we hit space, our character has spawned, we run forward, we go through here, we hit E, level 2 hallway. You can see we are loading the correct level. We hit spacebar, and there we go. If we run over here, actually, let's run back real quick. If we go into this door, we hit spacebar. We are here at our door, and there we go. And that's how we can do indexes for our levels. If we run up here, we hit E and we hit space, you'll see that we spawn at this location because our index is set in our level 2 hallway. Our other level interactable, this guy, is set to target spawn index of 0, and the level path is level 1 wake up. So this is linked to our target spawn index of 0. Which if you look at our scene for our spawn indexes, that is this index here, spawn index of 0. So that's how the linking kind of operates, if that makes sense. Now, one of the things that we should expose to the project is the rotation. If you noticed, as our character runs up through here and we hit E and we hit spacebar, you'll notice that we're rotated this direction, not this direction. And that's something that we need to fix on our end, is we need to basically say, okay, like, this is what our rotation is going to be. So in order to fix our rotation, we'll just go to our load level interactable. We'll select our spawn index and we'll just rotate that 90 degrees. And that should hopefully do it. If we refresh, we hit start game, we spawn, we run over here like so, we hit E, space, and we are faced the correct direction. E, space, we are faced the correct direction. So that's the easiest way to solve that. Now, if we wanted to, we could make a slightly more flexible system where we expose the rotation parameter of this, and then we could basically just on start set the rotation to that. But it's up to you guys on which one you like. In my opinion, if you're coming out of the door, you're always going to face the exterior direction, like the straight out direction, right? You'll always face this way when you're, coming out of a door. So it just makes sense to spawn the character that way. Though if you want that flexibility, you're welcome to do it. But I think that addresses the majority of the issues that people had with the previous level loading system. So we set up a new system that allows us to, transfer our player from a level to another. We set up the ability to handle all of our level loading and unloading under one node instead of under our tree node, which will make things a little bit more flexible. We set up a index system so we can actually load different doors and actually spawn at different points in the level. And we set up and fixed a few small design bugs that we had originally implemented. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button, because I am here to make content for you guys. And it's always important to me to know how I'm doing. This video, as with all of my videos, was a viewer suggested video. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to add it to my list of tutorials to make. I do want to expand this horror game into allowing the enemy to kill the player. I want to talk about a crafting system, which I actually already have built. I just have to record it, so it should be relatively quick. And I would love to have some kind of note pickup system or something like that. So let me know if there's any additional stuff you think is useful, because again, I do this stuff for you guys and I just want to know what you guys would like. And hey, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to help you out, or jump on my Discord. The link is in the description, and anybody on that Discord will help you out with your problems. So don't be afraid to ask. But that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.